Friday night, strong wind was blowing in the parking lot of the university, where Carlos was studying about 9:30 p.m. The lane that everyone was teasing was going to take out his bike as usual to go home. But the parking lot was lonelier than ever, and he for the first time felt a fear which he had never felt before. Even when he saw his uncle lying on his grandfather's estate, full of flies and worms, eating what was left of him, he got on his bike and he started hearing laughter inside his head. Dark, mocking laughter, repeated over and over again. The lame being in shock because he thinks he's going crazy, but no, it was his reality from now on. Carlos decides to go to class on Monday as he has to submit his assignment, but his heart is bursting. He didn't want to go through the same thing. An hour and a half of class passes and Carlos decides to go to the bathroom. He felt uncomfortable. He was tired of the class, sleepy and apart, thinking about what had happened to him. He takes water, enters the bathroom to urinate, and at the end he sits down to think and suddenly a loud pee echoes in his ears. He decides to get out of there as soon as he can and return into the classroom. All his mates were pale, staring at him with physical appearance like horses, completely wide eyes pointing at him, and they looked ready to kill with mocking smiles on their faces. Does he look up then and in horror asks them why they are looking at him like that? But he closes his eyes and when he opens them again, they are all looking at him with confused face. Carlos feels shamed and sits down again. At the end of the class, he runs away, very embarrassed about what happened. His classmates, frightened and surprised, begin to laugh at him. Carlos goes back to the bathroom to think about what happened in the classroom and what solution he can give to the events that are occurring. But suddenly, he hears a buzzing sound, as if there was a fly flying nearby. He tries to look for it and with his hand, he tries to shoo it away by making movements. But each time the sound gets louder and louder. Then, he doesn't hear a single one, but like a swarm. But he doesn't see a single one around him, and begins to cry and scream like crazy. He tries to scare them away, although physically he doesn't see a single one. At that moment, one of his classmates enters when he hears noises and screams, and Carlos, when he sees him, grabs him by the shoulders and shouts desperately, "Help me, man, help me." But immediately upon touching him, his body began to fade and slowly rot right from where the king had touched him. Upon seeing this scene, it seems that his eyes almost popped out. He was terrified and ran out of the place. He felt like a monster, a murderer. The next day in the morning, he decides to go very early to investigate the scene of the events, but the forensic police were already on the scene and he cannot pass. There, he realizes that everything he has experienced is real and not part of his imagination. So he decides to go to a mountain to cry out for the release of his soul. Whoever had it wanted to let him free, but this will have a greater consequence. The spirit or demon that was biding his life to a course told him that he had to make a sacrifice. So Carlos did not hesitate, and the next day he called his girlfriend to meet him at the pool of his condominium. They swam for a while, but he stayed on the edge, thinking and looking at nothing. He suddenly began to bristle and heard a noise behind him. It was the sound of bugs flying, getting closer and closer. He was very scared and invited his girlfriend to come in the house to eat a delicious feast.
Once he served and prepared the table, he told her to sit down, but by accident, she drops a glass to which he says, "Easy love, and get a broom and pick it up." After doing so, he goes to the kitchen to get another glass, but suddenly he feels some cold hands on his neck, and when dragging him on the floor, she desperately shouts, "I'm sorry." Hours later, his neighbors report to the police about a strong smell coming from their home. They were both completely rotten, and with a terrible amount of flies eating the remains of the prepared feast.